Hello and welcome to the Vinyl Vault. My name is Tony Nguyen.
And I am Parker.
And today we are tackling Tupac Shakur's Me Against the World. Me Against the World is the third studio album by Tupac Shakur, which was released on March 14th, 1995. And we're going to be breaking down a few of the select songs that kind of stood out to us. We're going to be talking about a little bit of Tupac's impact on the world and in particularly African American and African American culture.
Yeah, and I just want to address something with this. I know that people might be seeing this thinking, Tony, Parker, you guys are doing the Vinyl Vault. You've been looking at songs and albums from a time, and the main approach to this, yes, Vinyl Vault is alliterative, and we did, start off by doing vinyls from a time where vinyls were much more popular, and we will still continue to do that, but we do want to kind of branch out from that corner that we almost painted ourselves in at the beginning, and experience other types of music that are simply just newer than from the 80s or 70s. And so this was definitely an interesting experience. I mean, Tony, I'm sure you'll agree with me. This is almost the, when you think of the stereotypical West Coast rap, this is it. I think from the jump, some things that stuck out to me was the intro here. The intro is filled with, it's not unusual to hear audio bites from movies or TV shows and songs. This album starts off quite clearly with reporters. Reporter bites talking about, Tupac being shot several times in New York City. There's a reporter here. The lyrics say that Tupac Shakur secures one clean legal victory as he's dismissed of assault charges. And so, I mean, it's kind of setting this precedent that he's not only endured a lot, but also gone through a lot. And a lot of people may have issues with the things that he has done or is accused of doing, but he's definitely using those experiences to craft this. This isn't the stereotypical rap album where you talk about how much money you have or you talk about the cool cars. We were talking about it earlier this week. You really, it's an unfortunate thing to say, but you really could have just called this album "Why My Childhood Was Not Good," because he definitely uses a lot of those experiences growing up, and we'll dive into these more specifically as we get on. But first glance, first listen, you hear that these lyrics are more emotional, more poetic. And you can see why he influences today's music still with Kendrick Lamar. I want to dive into that real quick because I just thought about it while I was talking. Tupac using reporter sound bites to intro his songs. If you ever listen to "Humble" by Kendrick Lamar, before it breaks down, you hear sound bites from Fox News anchors criticizing Kendrick Lamar and his influence on today's youth through his music. And so you can connect those parallels pretty quickly, given how Kendrick Lamar's always looked up to Tupac and throughout his career. So that's just something that stuck out to me. I mean, the intro is just the intro. The second song, I think right out the gate is "If I Die Tonight." That one I liked. Starts off, it sets the precedent immediately. There's a spoken intro. It says, "A coward dies 1,000 deaths, a soldier dies but once." And that's clearly setting this precedent that Tupac is a man who stands on the values that he believes in, and he's willing to die for those values and those morals, and he's not going to back down. A coward dies 1,000 deaths, a soldier dies but once.
Yeah, and just in case you're not familiar of the time frame around here and what exactly was going on with Tupac, he was shot just before, during the making of this album. He was shot 4 or 5 times in the lobby while recording this album, and it was the first real. He addresses death quite a bit in this album, and even though it was something that had just recently happened to him, he talks about how his entire life he's been feeling this sense of, death is just looming, which, is kind of eerie considering that he would pass away from a very violent death as well, just a few years later. So, yeah, what you're saying with the intro to, hearing everything that was going on, what's interesting of this album also was that when it was released, he was in prison, and he talks about that he's either going to end up dead or in prison, which unfortunately was very much true of what was to come in the coming months and years. So leading to If I Died Tonight, and I mean you could just look at the song titles for the album and know that, like, okay, yeah, this is very much going to be a reflection of his life and a prediction of what's to come.
Yeah, I mean, look at the lyrics of the title track, "Me Against the World," and I specifically printed the lyrics so I could read them to give them some context. I mean, I can't do it justice because there's no music or things like that, but I mean, just looking at the lyrics in the first verse, he says, "The question is, will I live? No one in the world loves me. I'm headed for danger. Don't trust strangers. Put one in the chamber whenever I'm feeling this anger." So, I mean, this is clearly a man who almost, despite the fame and, the friends around him, he does feel somewhat isolated. Mm-hmm. And you can read the words, but listening to the music, you almost feel it. And then obviously the chorus is just, him speaking about how he feels like it is him against the world. Yeah,
very much so, because at the same time, not only did he just, recently recover from getting shot, he was then accused of assault of a woman. And so the media was just all over him. You're talking about, Kendrick Lamar getting, and doing the same concept. I mean, yeah, Tupac was very much in the social media or the media's eyes, would
using that.
Yeah, exactly, and he's reflecting on just how the world seemingly is very much against him. In fact, though this is the title track for the album, it was originally a later track. F the World was actually the original title for this album, but obviously couldn't do that for
you can put it out as a song, you can't have it on the front of the album.
Yeah, but that's exactly how he felt of everything that was going on.
And I want to get into actually, before we even get into to this one song that I was telling you, I actually have a theory that I'm going to dive into real quick. It's almost, they say history repeats itself, and I do think there are parallels in today's music that, in terms of the social, what are the words I'm looking for? Connecting to society. I mean, you look at people, in the 50s, they were anti-rock and roll. They thought it was the devil's music. And then you look at people in the 90s, that rap music's going to, rot your brain. And then obviously we have today's music. But still, Tupac is one of those people that he's been gone for 30 plus years now, nearly 30 years. And yet he's still, whenever you think of rap music, you think Biggie, Tupac, NWA. It's one of those things where his music has transcended not only his death, but generations after him, to where, I'd rather listen to this 3 hours a day than whatever the new music that's out right now. But that's just me. But I also know that in today's music, there's less personality, there's less emotion. Some could call it a cash grab. I won't call it that. But I want to get into this next one. It's called Temptations. And so you guys remember, I mean, I say you guys, if anybody has an internet connection from the last year, they have probably heard about this beef between Kendrick Lamar and Drake. And a lot of that stems from Drake taking on this persona of, he's the next Tupac. He bought a lot of Tupac's jewelry at auction, I believe. And so Kendrick Lamar having, idolizing Tupac growing up on that side of, on that side of the country, the West Coast, living some of the similar, upbringings that Tupac has lived, he takes that very personal. And so I think that's why, a lot of the things he went after Drake, accusing Drake of not really living the culture, but more mocking it. And, but I was listening to it and it hit me and just a light bulb went off. In this song, Temptations, there is a chorus where the guy says, I know you've been searching for someone to make you happy and get the job done. You say you needed a man with money, but I can't be there. And will you still care? There is a song from 5 or 6 years ago. I can't pronounce the guy's first name, and I can't really remember it, but it's called Stars Align. And in the chorus, Drake is singing that exact chorus. And I know that it wasn't a shot at Kendrick, but clearly lifting lyrics from a Tupac song and then putting it in today's, I wonder if that's also something that really irked Kendrick, because, it's not enough that you allegedly are stealing this culture, but you're also sampling it in songs that, turning rap music into pop music. It kind of loses the I don't want to say the culture. I said culture too much. It kind of loses its effectiveness, because rap in itself is rhythm and poetry.
Yeah.
And when you make it poppy, you lose the poetry aspect. It turns into a Charlie XCX song, but that's neither here nor there.
I mean, a lot of rappers are obviously very much influenced by Tupac, and taking lyrics or the way that in particular rapper raps, and then in Drake's case, actually lifting, whether it's a sample or him just doing his own interpretation on it. I mean, the entire genre of rap is very much sampling and things. So it's a very rap thing to do. But some people would say, well, and just even back then, whenever rap first started and was sampling, leave the original artists, come up with your own stuff, be original, and that's been a part of the way that rap has been pieced together, is that it is sampling, it is or taking something and piecing two bits of ideas and piecing it together to come up with your own original idea within it.
Yeah, I think sampling is vital to rap music. I feel like listening to the funk and the soul and the R&B from the 60s to the 80s, and then seeing it recreated. I mean, you could even go, like we talked about it before, Michael McDonald being sampled with Warren G for Regulate. It's like, yeah, you should, the idea with music is you always come up with your own thing. But, there's only so many notes in a scale, and there's only so many melodies you can come up with. And so I think I think there's good ways to sample. I think there's bad ways to sample. And I think 90s hip hop was a really good example of intertwining that funk and R&B while also giving it a fresh, a fresh coat of paint for a new generation. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, and even the original beats that were made, typically everyone sort of used the same instruments because they were a lot cheaper, they're a lot more accessible, and they were able to do so much with the instruments that were there. And I mean, that's one thing that I kind of noticed when listening to the album, is that there's an in particular keyboard sound that you hear, the higher pitched sound that very much
almost
you'll hear.
Sounds like a GTA. Like whenever you hear the GTA theme.
Yeah. I mean, obviously it's there. I mean, you'll, following the history, you'll hear, G-Funk and with Dr. Dre and, him using, very, very much the same instruments, but, doing his own thing in it. And that's sort of how I kind of felt upon listening to this album, was like, oh, wait, is this time frame in which Tupac and Dre were together? It wasn't. It was before then, but you could tell that, oh man, it's leading towards there. You can hear the influences that eventually would lead to, them working together.
Should also be worth noting, I was talking about Kendrick and Tupac's relationship earlier. On Kendrick's newest album, GNX, there's a song called Reincarnated, and basically each verse, Kendrick talks about three different people through life. I know one was, I think, one verse was about Berry Gordy. I think one verse was about Billie Holiday. I can't remember the other two, but it is straight up either 99% sampling or just straight up using the same beat as one of Tupac's songs. I don't think it's from this album, but it's definitely, and it's just another homage to somebody that he's looked up to his entire life. But I did want to get into this next one, Tony. If you want to talk about it, we can. The title is Young, and then there's a word we can't say, and basically from what I've read and what I've listened to about this song is I was going into it with a different expectation. I thought it was going to talk about how, we're on top of the world, we're young, we can do whatever we want. Actually, quite the opposite. Tupac uses this using his platform and his music to basically tell kids, be kids, stay in school, do right, walk the narrow path. Don't, just because you think it's cool to be a gangster or because you think it's cool to do these things, don't do it. I think a lot of people have this idea that rappers are wanting people to do these things. They want people to, get in certain kind of habits and do things. And this song is completely contradicting that altogether.
Yeah, I mean the idealization of Tupac and the West Coast movement and everything. I mean, Tupac is also very synonymous with gangster rap, and those who would look up to him feel like you're not, truly a part of the culture unless you live the hard life, the hard knock life of living in, the projects and being, slinging dope and all this other stuff. And Tupac's music, though it does talk about those things, it's not what he's preaching, and not even preaching about those things. He's not, at least in this album, he isn't talking about like, hey, you should, be like me, or you're not real unless you're, this and that. It's very much of just like, this is not the life that, I'm just, I'm telling you about what my life is like and how I wish it was better. And you guys are young. You guys are listening to me, so listen to me now. Like there's so much more you can do to.
If you're gonna blare the music talking about all the bad vices, at least take some advice.
Yeah.
I did want to point out some lyrics in this song to kind of bring home the point we were talking about. The bridge, he says, "I'm telling you to be young, have your brains, and have every limb, and that you guys don't know how good you really have it." And so he says, people need to calm down and find something they want to do for the rest of their life. And so, I just feel like Tupac does have a reputation within certain communities of being this awful influence and things like that, and it just maybe people need to listen to the albums a little more deeply before they make those those snap judgments.
Yeah, and I mean, it didn't help that, again, the media was very much painting him as that. But, I mean, he was an artist, full and full. I mean, he, at the time, was also doing movies. He was all over the place and getting, his face, on your screen, whether or good, good stuff or bad stuff. I mean, he was everywhere. And that kind of recognition comes with positives and a lot of negatives. And, unfortunately, in terms of the media's eyes, it was very much a negative thing, or at least, they were just reporting on those said things. So I think, obviously that's why this album exists, to an extent, is that, he's just fed up with how he's being portrayed.
Well, and also, I mean, I think about, today's society, and I had an idea. I had it. Today's society is very polarizing when it comes to artists. Either you like them or you don't. And my question to you, Tony, is, obviously we'll go through other albums of other artists through time, but some artists have things hanging over their heads. things that they've done outside of their careers, and it's amplified because they're famous. But do you believe, when it comes to music, movies, art, over just general art, can you separate the art from the artist, or do you have to value everything that goes on surrounding that person and determine whether you listen to their music or watch their movies or not?
Me personally, I can, but you can't help but, especially if it's something you're passionate about in terms of the negativity that might surround this, said artists. I, I especially with like movies and actors, whenever they get in trouble for stuff, just to throw in an example, like Kevin Spacey, like an amazing actor, but would come out
Questionable person.
and with that, like I still appreciate the art that he's made. Like I said, I acknowledge him as a, very, very talented actor, and try not to think about, it's a character that's there in the art, and I can separate it there.
And for legal purposes, we're not accusing anybody of anything. We're simply just, when you hear certain names, people tend to think of certain things, and so sometimes that for example, Michael Jackson. There are people that still will not listen to Michael Jackson, even what 2009. It's been 16 years since he passed.
Yeah.
There are people that probably still don't listen to him because of the things that he was doing, post his career, into his retirement. And I think, people can have their opinions about Tupac, whether, the things that he was acquitted of, whether he did it or not, or the other things that he was alleged. I think that regardless of all that stuff surrounding him, I think this is an album that people, if they want to do it, if they can, if people don't like the language, try to find an edited version. I think it's worth still listening to because it's still a person's story. And just because he tells it in a way that isn't your cup of tea doesn't make it any less story worthy, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially as, both of us as journalists, it's very much our job to, try to get the story out of, to be the voice of the voiceless, to inform the people of the history that is happening every single day. And here is an artist who feels like the media isn't doing their job very well and is just putting out his art and talking about exactly what it, how he feels and what is going on in his community. I think that, despite someone listening to this and maybe you don't like in particular words or the fact that it is very much a, lot of violent lyrics and things like that, he lived a violent life, and it's his life, so you get a peek into what his life is like. And that's the big thing, about me listening to this album is that I think about my own life and be like, man, I've had it really, really easy in comparison. I don't have, this constant fear, to look over my shoulder because I feel like I'm going to die, via my peers, via the police, via, just anything. And it's just being able to look into someone else's perspective, I think is extremely important, and why this album and Tupac Shakur in general is so beloved is that he was willing to talk about the stuff that people don't generally talk about.
And that was probably the three biggest things that I took away from this album is one, that he does, he feels like it's him against the world. I hate to, use the album name over and over again, but he feels that way for a reason, and feelings are validated. The second thing I took away from was he wanted everybody to have a really good snapshot of what his life was like that got him to where he was at. It wasn't like he was, he didn't win some like American Idol contest and then started writing these raps about, you know, a troubled upbringing. I mean, he lived it. And that's, you can almost hear, I don't want to say the passion, because nobody's passionate about having a bad upbringing, but you can definitely feel. I'll put it this way: if he was still alive today, given today's, you know, in society, the big push for mental health awareness, mental health trauma, dealing with trauma, things like that, I think if he was still with us today, he would be a big, a big influence on dealing with trauma, dealing with childhood trauma, dealing with mental health. And and then I think the third thing I took away from it was simply, you know, there was, obviously there was enough of an influence on kids that they wanted to become gangsters, that he felt he needed to take time, specifically at least 3 or 4 minutes of this album, to basically just tell kids, no, go to school, get a job. You know, if you want to go to college, if you want to go to a trade school, do that. If you don't, do whatever you want. Just don't do this. It's not, you can't make a career. You can't retire from, you know, doing a lot of the things that he's, you know, that he says he's done and doesn't wish to do again.
Yeah. He definitely, you know, tries to tell people that, you know, you can make, you know, the large amount of money in a much safer way and in a lot more intelligent way than the way he did it. And yeah, it's talking about like just mental health. I believe it's Lord Knows, the eighth track, where he, there's some lyrics about, you know, that he had suicidal thoughts, about, you know, maybe it's just, you know, easier going that route and stuff. And that, again, that's, I mean, it's still a very much a taboo, subject matter, that, you know, throughout the years, you know, people don't really talk about. And, you know, it's only been more and more recently where people are opening up about it. And, you know, people are realizing that mental health is a very vital and important thing to be aware of.
Yeah, you could argue that, I mean, in the 90s, you know, like you said, it was very taboo. There was kind of a stigma that where if you were in touch with your emotions, that you were considered, you know, soft.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I mean, maybe, you know, I think this is his third studio album. And then maybe the first two, he had to establish this reputation of being this tough guy. And then once, you know, he talks about his emotions and feelings, I don't know, maybe back in 95, he thought he was taking a risk doing that. Or maybe he felt that he had built up enough of a career and enough fame with people across the country that maybe he had enough ears to listen to these problems. But yeah, I mean, I would argue it's probably, you know, a bit of a risk for Tupac to be that in touch with his emotions, and not only that, but broadcasting it for the world, and obviously still today for people to listen to.
Yeah, and I think that's what leads really well to the ninth track, "Dear Mama," where here's a gangster rapper talking about how much he loves his mom. And, you know, I mean, a very, very big departure of, you know, the subject matter. But again, it's something that you don't expect to hear, and very much an important thing in his life. And I'm sure with a lot of people, you know, with their own lives, you know, just letting a song about moms and, you know, appreciating them for what they've done, the struggles that they go through, just to have their kid, you know, survive to live, basically.
In every I think that's like the very last line before every chorus in that song, he says, you know, I there's no way he could repay her, but, you know, he felt that this was one of the things he could do to kind of start. It should be worth noting that this album, I believe, and we can check the notes, it was released on the album label that his mom actually owns. So I say that to say this: it's not like he was some you know, nepo baby in the industry. I think that once he had accrued enough earnings from this life, performing rap music, I think he was able to set his mom up pretty nicely, and, you know, kind of give her a career that would help, you know, alleviate some of the worries that they had growing up. But it's you know, it kind of goes to the point you were saying earlier, that a lot of these tracks feel eerie, given what we know now that a year or less than a year later he would be dead. And so it's interesting, he writes this letter, and the saying always goes, no parent should ever have to bury their child. And it kind of, it takes on a whole new level when you think about that. He wrote this song well and alive as a thank you, and then, what happened. And so it's interesting to see what happens to songs once things happen outside of the song, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. A little background trivia of this song as well is that he wrote it while in prison and wrote the lyrics and called his mom and spoke the lyrics or rapped the lyrics to his mom over the phone. And apparently they both, ended up crying, listening to it and everything, which is, very, very sweet and everything. And of course, this song would be one of the few songs in the rap genre to be archived in the Library of Congress. So, I mean, if there's one song that you should listen to that, in the genre of gangster rap, surprisingly enough, you should listen to Dear Mama, as I think it's at least the one thing that as any individual who has a mother who was there to help you grow up and everything like that, I think that listening to it, you can't help but think about your own mother listening to it.
And it should also, Tupac's been very well known for his, I don't want to say crusade, but in a lot of his tracks, he also advocates a lot for women's rights. And you hear that a lot in Keep Your Head Up, which is, I think, the album I think it's the album before this one. But yeah, he's always been in touch of putting women's rights in the forefront, defending women, things like that. But yeah, he's definitely he's good.
He's good. Well, I think he learned a lot of that from his parents, who were both Black Panthers, and obviously, their organization being very, very, very known to be vocal about how they feel about the society and how people are treated. And you can really tell that perhaps his general flow and cadence is taken from somebody like Malcolm X or taken from somebody like Martin Luther King. In fact, it almost sounds like he's kind of doing an impression of them whenever he does the long vowels and the way that his flows go. It almost sounds like he's preaching to the people. He's talking like doing a big speech to a large crowd.
I think, I assume you'll agree, it's not just, performing your music in that style, but it's also the manner and the words that you pick that also have just as much meaning as the way you put them out there. And so when you look back at one of those songs where he tells the youth, stay young, graduate, move on with life, it's almost as if it's it's a call, it's a challenge. It's almost maybe a plead with America, don't go down a path like this. So.
Yeah. Shall we move on to the next song?
Any other songs stick out to you?
I really enjoyed Old School, and just a shout out to all of the pioneers of the New York City scene where rap was first created, and just the acknowledgement of the old school rappers, the old school people who defined the genre in the first place. I thought it was really, really awesome that he made a song specifically just to give them a shout out, that if you hadn't heard of all these people who were pioneers, here's Tupac saying like, hey, check these guys out, because they're the ones who influenced me, and these are the people that if you want to look up to, like potentially if you want to be a rapper, like listen to this. If you want to know about your culture, listen to this, because this is where it all comes from.
Yeah, it's really apparent in the chorus of Old School, which it's ironic that, he's talking about how old school was better, old school was this, old school was that, and then, you and we look at Tupac as old school. We don't think about who was it? The like the Grandmaster Flash, the Sugar Hill Gang. We don't look at them as old school. Probably should, but the chorus here specifically, it says, "What more could I say? I wouldn't be here today if old school didn't pave the way." And so, that really that brings home the point you were bringing about, is that this is clearly an homage to the people that came before him, and I thought it was a good one. It definitely sounded like that '80s style. It's almost all these. I don't want to say that all these songs sounded the same. They all had similar traits, and they pretty much all used the same instruments, and they had different melodies. But I think this one kind of stuck out to me because I think that they tried to create a melody and a beat that matched the era that he is, reminiscing about.
Yeah, absolutely. I will say the song just before that, "Can You Get Away," was definitely a track that, of all the songs about the terribleness of the life that he's going through and the violence and everything like that, he can still do a love song and just talk about a girl who even so is still talking about what sounds like some a woman going through some sort of abuse and just being like, hey, I like you, and I wish I could help you out, and maybe I could be a shoulder, for you to lean on, and also hey, I treat you better, I'd be a better man for you, kind of a thing.
And it's interesting. No offense to today's art, regardless of who puts it out. But it should also be worth noting that he's writing these songs about people that he has these emotions for, and it's not sexual. It's not, he's not commenting on the body. He's not commenting on how well they can dance certain parts of said body or what outfits they're wearing. It's he's valuing people for who they are. At least in these songs. And I think that's something that is interesting. You hear a lot of music today sampling songs from the 90s, but yet they don't seem to keep up with the content of those songs. And I don't know if it's a shock and awe thing. I don't know if it's simply just, hey, let's see, the Cardi B and Megan Thee Stallion song that pretty much divided the nation, I guess, in terms of whether it was a good song or not. It's interesting. I don't know if it's a shock and awe thing. I don't know if that's just the way music's heading, unfortunately. But it's just, I think it's important to note that 90s rap, at least in this album, respected women and stamp of approval.
Yeah, obviously it leads to more sexualized and a lot more blatant, not a whole lot of metaphors and stuff, but sometimes it just ends up being that they really like in particular body parts, and and
about the song or music in general.
Oh, that the genre, the style of doing a love song, it no longer becomes about love. Okay. It's very much.
I heard the song. I hope I didn't miss half the lyrics.
No. I mean,
in the back end and was just saying all this, and I was like, oh, don't embarrass me.
No, I mean, in the album, and I don't recall which maybe it's Temptations, where he talks about I can be there for you and everything, but just know that I'm going to be, I've got a lot of temptations. There's a lot of women out there, and I'll try to stay true and everything, but that's a part of it as well. And again, it is a truth of his life, or at the same time, rap is also known for accentuating circumstances and things, because it's more so about what they want and the goals that they're hoping for, and it's doing it until it becomes true, kind of a thing.
Let me put it this way, because I don't want to embarrass myself by playing a flag, for something that I didn't maybe fully comprehend. I think a good message would be if you listen to Temptations. If he's single, he's single. But if you listen to the other one, if he's in a committed relationship, he's going to be committed. I'm going to assume that was the message. Please don't embarrass me. I could be so wrong.
Honestly, it's all, obviously music is also subjective. So, how you take it is how you take it. And for me, and in this particular song, Can You Get Away? For me, it was definitely a guy who was interested in a girl, and the girl, he can see the relationship with her and her current, significant other, and seeing that it's not a very good relationship, and he's promising that hey, come hang out with me and I'll show you how a real man should treat you, and how people should treat you. It's obviously a little bit more as we were talking about, like a respectful way of trying to, whether he's trying to court a woman or if he's just trying to protect a woman from the things that he sees.
It's important to know every rap song is about courting. So
yes, it's definitely always about courting. All right, so let's move on to. There's obviously F the World is the next song, the 13th track there.
That one I kind of just it's another personal story about how he feels about the world. I don't have that in my stack here just because I felt that it's I don't want to call it redundant. I feel like it might be kind of an insult given the personal stories that he's telling, but it's very clearly in the same ballpark as a couple other tracks. That's just how I took it.
Yeah.
And so that's why I wasn't prepared to talk about it. I felt that
Sure.
there were other songs that clearly addressed how he was feeling when it came to society itself.
Yeah, you can see the title and know, like, okay, like
That's
this
how he
is
feels.
Yeah, it's how he feels, and even the next song, Death Around the Corner, it is still that same subject matter. And one thing that kind of stuck out with me there was that there was a lot more sound effects and things like that he kind of sprinkled throughout, because that in particular track opens up with a woman like yelling at him, that he keeps looking out the window and being paranoid, and he's got an AK-47 in hand and everything like that, and they kind of do almost like a bit while it's rapping.
Well, and this also goes back to a lot of the themes of mental health, paranoia, isolation. Specifically, look at the lyrics here. He says, "I guess I've seen too many murders. The doctors," I'm assuming he's referring to psychiatric help doctors. "The doctors can't help me. Got me stressing with my pistol in my sheets. It ain't healthy." And then he says, "Am I paranoid? Tell me the truth. I'm out the window with my AK ready to shoot." And so, that just puts hammer to nail. That's how he's feeling. He feels like he's got to constantly watch his back. And I think I remember you saying this is after the shooting in New York City, so he's already been shot. Mm-hmm. And so it's not a. I don't blame him for being paranoid that something's going to happen again. I don't blame him for thinking, oh, I've already been shot once. Surely that won't happen again. And then obviously, given how he went, I would say he was justifying his paranoia. But that's also, unfortunately, that was the time back then. You had, oh boy, you listen to the rap beef. I'm putting beef in quotes for the people at home between Kendrick and Lamar, and there was really no. The beef was just they didn't like each other. And that was it. And they wrote
Kendrick
songs,
and Drake.
Kendrick and Drake. Yeah, sorry. Kendrick and Drake. They didn't like each other. That's the most recent rap beef we have to look at. Biggie and Tupac, people were shooting each other. Mm-hmm. And, people, they weren't just content with going into the booth and saying a bunch of stuff about somebody they didn't like. Moves were made. We can't legally prove who made said moves. I don't know if they've ever, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think they ever tied the shooting in New York back to Biggie. But that's always been the conspiracy theory, is that Biggie or Puff or Diddy and had some sort of connection to that, and then the same conspiracy theories flew when Tupac died.
Yeah.
That was my rant. People really don't know how to do rap beef.
Yeah, I mean, I think of whenever there was beef with like Eminem and like Ja Rule and
Christina Aguilera.
Mariah Carey. Of course, Eminem would go on and have beef with a bunch of people.
Who does he not have beef with?
Right, and but like he talks about how he didn't get into the rap game, you know, to do this, you know, to have this kind of stuff. You know, to him it was the music. It was you know,
poetry. It was. I mean, there's a reason one of his movies is called Poetic Justice. I mean, the guy loves poetry.
Yeah. And unfortunately, yeah, that's a part of the gangster rap genre, is that, you know, and why it's referred to as that, and so on and so forth, is that, you know, unfortunately, yeah, that was what was going on. That was what it would eventually lead to, because, you know, West Side to the East Side to your Bloods and your Crips and things like that was everywhere around Tupac.
If you lived in St. Louis, you were safe. Nobody had beef with the Midwest.
I
don't know if that's true or not.
And one of the songs, he gives St. Louis a shout out.
Whoa, Nelly.
Whoa, Nelly, indeed. But yeah, anyway, yeah, it's a part of the culture, and I mean, luckily we don't see that nowadays. You know, that the beef.
That's good. I'm glad that people aren't settling their disagreements with violence. I guess I should put that out there. I don't think people should settle their disagreements with violence. I'm just saying that it was clearly different back then, and I was gonna say, you know, if you think you have a lot going on in your life, imagine being Tupac in 1994. It was not a good year for Tupac in terms of everything going on around him,
and yet he releases this album. It's huge, and then, you know, does All Eyes on Me, the next one, and that blows up, and then he's, you know, solidified as, you know, a contender for greatest of all time, and then becoming almost a martyr, you know, after, post his death, alongside Biggie, and everything that happened, and, you know, the movement of like trying to stop, you know, the violence, you know, between it all, and yeah, trying to keep beef with just a battle of words and whatnot, because yeah, that's obviously the better way to go.
And the thing is that you listen to these lyrics, you hear, you know, there's songs that are totally, you know, they're what we've talked about for this entire, we're almost on an hour now. But when you hear the songs about him feeling isolated and paranoid and worried, you never once hear him talk about, and if he does, I've clearly missed it, but how I interpreted the music was, he never once said he was afraid to die.
Mm-hmm.
He never once said that, you know, I need to go in hiding. I don't want to die. I'm scared. He never says that. He always says, you know, he always had this approach of, you know, I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing, and I'm going to keep spreading the messages that I'm spreading, and whatever happens, happens.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, his time was cut too short. I do wonder what would have happened if he didn't die. You know, we talked about that with Metallica. You know, what would their future look like if their bass player hadn't died? And, you know, I mean, it's a good what if. You know, him and Dr. Dre were just getting entwined with California Love, and it's interesting to see what would have happened with that. I mean, because there's a real world possibility that if Tupac hadn't died, we would have seen an actual rap track with Dre, Tupac, Eminem, maybe Snoop. I mean, I know that Eminem's not from the West Side, but Dre found him.
Yeah.
It's interesting to do the what if exercise.
Yeah. Honestly, that would be a wonderful one if for it to happen. At the same time, I mean, Dr. Dre and Snoop, got a lot bigger because they decided that they weren't going to do the gangster rap stuff, as they were very much a part, in it. I mean, at the time of Tupac's death, I mean, Snoop was the number one rap artist at the time. And very much into like the culture of the gangster rap stuff. And it wasn't until Dr. Dre kind of developed G-Funk in his own album with the Chronic and everything like that, where it went back to partying and
I think Gin and Juice came out around this
right,
time.
yeah, and it was more of a celebration of life and the things that life can provide, and not about this guy sucks and, I don't like, XYZ, so on and so forth. It's the complete opposite. Like, I love life. I love, the potential for, having the barbecues and, the girls and the money and the freedom and whatnot. And, still addressing the, social injustices,
yeah.
but very much changing the game into that. So, I don't know. I feel like I wonder if Tupac surviving would just prolong the gangster rap genre for a few more years, and that maybe it was inevitable, because it seemingly was. It was just becoming more and more violent.
But do you think Tupac's death kind of, for lack of a better phrase, was kind of like a reality check for rappers, and they maybe hypothetically it became too real once Tupac died, and then they started transitioning to different things to rap about, things that people probably couldn't have beef with? I mean, who's going to say no to a good party,
Yes, I do believe that it was a essential part of the timeline, I feel like it was just escalating. It just kept going to escalate, and I don't think either were going to really back down, with the beef, that it wouldn't die down until something significant happened. And, nothing is more shocking than, a death of two very, very, larger than life personas on both ends, to really shock everyone into being like, all right, we need to do something else, because, we're already struggling, as kids here. And here we are starting to make an actual influence in the world, and we're, killing each other, I think it was very much a pivotal point, a moment that was inevitably going to happen. And yeah, why the artists then changed their focus to more positivity in their own way.
So basically what you're saying is, if Tupac had survived, we wouldn't have had Lil Pump.
I don't think. I'm sure some of the Lils will show up, but
so many Lils. There's a lot of Lils.
There are a lot of Lils. I don't know. Do you think that?
I think you're onto something, because if you look at it, I mean, going into because Tupac died in 95, 96. And then, once the new millennium started, Eminem was definitely one of the main, when you think of like early 2000s rap, that's the first thing that comes to mind for me. And he was mainstream from the drum. He was mainstream from the jump, but his raps were mainly just, calling out celebrities and calling out, talking about, drinking and having fun. It wasn't like, he didn't have ops as what you hear in today's music. And so, and then, you go into, 2003, 2004, 50 Cent comes out and Kanye comes out, and, they talk about their own struggles, yes, but that's not the entire crux of their career. So I think you're onto something that, once Tupac died and then Biggie after, I think everybody kind of took a break and was like, wait a minute, we can't do this. This isn't sustainable. We can't keep burying our friends every time they come out with a new song.
Yeah.
And I think because of that, because you see that, there's, like the NFL, people were tackling each other head first, and then they thought, wait a minute, this is dangerous. We need to change things.
Right.
And so it doesn't shock me that, I've never really thought about it, about, what was that catalytic moment that changed rap forever. And I think that that's a good argument.
Yeah. Which actually then kind of makes sense to lead to the final song, Outlaw, which I think is sort of a meta song where he's talking to a child and the child says, I want to grow up to be an outlaw. I want to, and it's sort of a, just an observation or just a unfortunate byproduct of what Tupac is putting out there, that despite him making a full album about how hard his life is and how dangerous and so on and so forth, and how he's preaching to young people to, go a different route and whatnot, that people are still going to idolize him and go down that route because they think that's the way to do it. And that's unfortunately the truth to it.
You look at, if we want to get really deep with this, I mean, there are socio-economical barriers that some people feel like that's their only way of getting things done. Some places that, I'm sure there are areas in this country where people, it's probably more profitable to, do certain crimes or do certain things than it is to go to get a 9-to-5 job, and I don't wish that on anybody, and I wish it wasn't the way it was, but I'm not going to sit there and say that it doesn't exist.
Right. Well, I mean, also, people are trying, if they're trying to get out and to, be successful and whatnot. And the, seemingly for that in particular culture, the way to get out is either by going into sports, right. And going that route, becoming a rapper, and going that route, and school, death, or just being stuck there is, like the other alternatives there.
Find a hobby.
Well, whatever the case is, but like, some of those things require money to be able to do said things, and accessibility. Rap, all you have to be able to do is talk and connect with people, and you can find a way to, be successful with very, very little. Because, obviously that, you just know the right people and go, and have the talent and everything like that. But it doesn't cost a whole lot to at least get yourself started, to do that.
Yeah. And, we talked about it before, history repeating itself, back in the 90s, early 2000s, there was a huge influx of people. I mean, it still happens year to year, but a lot of people wanted to be rappers. A lot of people wanted to live a life that they felt was the gangster life. And you see it happening today but not with rap, but people, they want to be TikTokers and they want to be YouTubers. And it's like, and I'm not saying that rap is easy. I'm not saying YouTube is easy. I'm not saying TikTok is easy, but it's like you see these people, they idolize the famous and they think, how can I do that? And instead of, because there's no mistake, make no mistake, Tupac worked hard to get where he was. He wasn't a Nepo baby. He wasn't handed everything. He had to survive those traumatic events in his upbringing in order to tell those stories. It's not something that you can just relate to. It's not something you can just recreate on a dime. And so that's, I think, I don't know. This isn't like an advice hour. I'm not trying to give advice to the youth. But, if you want to pursue a line of art and artistry and you just rely on your upbringing, I mean, you may not have had the same struggles as Tupac, but, everybody has a story. You just got to find a way to tell it efficiently. And, if it's a story that people want to listen to, they'll listen to it. But if they don't get discouraged and find something else that you're good at,
Yeah, absolutely. But on the flip side, and especially with rap culture, it's very much, you have to be alpha. You have to be, like there's a certain bar that you have to be able to, pun intended, to
Bars.
to meet for people to reach you.
Yeah, there's never been a rap song where they've said, "I'm the second best. I'm second place."
Exactly.
You know,
Yeah, you have to declare yourself as the top and everything like that, because it's all about what the end goal is or and what have you. And that's where somebody like Kanye West, when he says these things, in Kanye's, maybe he truly believes it, whatever the case may be.
which era Kanye?
It's all just a matter of that in particular genre very much is trying to be the top of the top, the cream of the crop. And you could see the struggle of this song Outlaw, of just like, despite everything, I could be your old school G, and you can listen to my music and but you're probably not going to listen to my advice. You're just going to just do what I have done, thinking that this is the route to go because that's the way it is.
I would also say he may do this in other albums. In this album, he doesn't do a lot of self-promoting. He doesn't do a lot from what I've listened to. He doesn't do a lot of "I'm the best, I'm better than you, you guys can't touch me, I'll be immortal forever." It's really just it's almost as if he wrote a diary and he just set it to music.
I would say that definitely in this album, it is definitely like a diary. It's definitely a more personal and more truthfulness of the subject matters and everything like that. I would say that once the East Coast, West Coast beef really came up, is when he started, really praising, like, hey, West Side,
Well, even that he was praising his community. He was praising the people around him.
Yeah.
He was very proud of where he came from.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's a snapshot of just how far he had come. To say that, all of this stuff had happened to him, but still, he didn't give up. He didn't give in. He didn't he rose above it. And I think that's admirable.
Yeah. All right. Well, that was our look into "Me Against the World" by Tupac. Anything else you want to? Yeah.
There's no reason for us to do anything like try to interpret the album cover. He's just leaning up against something. It's not the world because, well, you could look at the album cover. Final thoughts. I mean, I think.
Do you think he's there leaning against the world?
Well,
it's him against the world, right?
It's I don't want to get into the debate, but he's not leaning up against a circle or a globe or something round.
The Earth is a slant.
The Earth is at a 45 degree angle.
It's a.
I don't have Tupac posters in my room. I don't wear Tupac shirts. I don't idolize him in the same way that a lot of people do. But he makes a great album. I've listened to it probably 4 times this week, and it's just it has a dual purpose for me. It's fun to listen to because when you listen to like just the beats itself, it kind of gives you kind of get a little bit of sense of nostalgia, that old school, pun intended. But then whenever you listen to it on a deeper level, it's like you're actually listening to a story rather than just like anything that came out in the last 20 years. So, I'm not going to give it stars. We haven't given any other album stars. I'm not going to start now. But definitely, I think everybody should listen to it at least once. And if you don't like it, you don't like it. But at least you can say you tried.
Do you feel like this has... would this album or would just Tupac in general kind of fit more of your musical rotation? Because I know you're a big person of giant playlists and what have you.
Variety. Tupac's definitely on my playlist, but it's more of a California Love And I laugh because one of the songs that I do like from his is "Hit 'Em Up," which is directly one of the songs in the Biggie beef. Which I don't know if you guys have ever listened to the last 45 seconds of it, but Tupac has a lot of not nice things to say, a lot of things that he wishes upon his adversary. There's actually this old TikTok, I say old TikTok, old Vine or whatever, where they're mimicking this scenario where the backup singers are reacting to him saying things like I think one of the things is he says he hopes that Biggie gets sickle cell, which is a horrible thing to say to somebody, and it's just these backup dancers are just like did he say that? Did we hear that one right?
They're just looking at each other.
Yeah, they're all just confused. Like, do we sing now? Like, what do we say? No, I mean, he's definitely in the playlist. This is probably not a summertime album. You know, don't bump this one while you're at the pool. You just want to be sad. But yeah, no, he's definitely in the playlist. Maybe not this album, but definitely Tupac overall.
I will ask, did you listen to this to this album the way that you typically do, just standing?
Oh yeah. For our viewers at home that don't understand, whenever we have an album from my collection that I have physically on vinyl, what I do is I go to my living room, I have 2 studio monitors, and I just play the record, and I just stand like 3 feet in front of the speakers. And I don't know how to describe it. It's like I'm in this cocoon of sound, and I'm just waiting to become a butterfly. And obviously, this is a song or an album that you could probably buy on vinyl today. They probably have reissued it on vinyl, but it did not originally come out on vinyl. Vinyl was not very popular in the mid-'90s. So I have these kind of studio headphones. I won't say the brand. They didn't sponsor us. And basically, they're almost I don't want to say they have built-in surround sound, but it feels like it. And so basically, every night I put the headphones on. They're over the head headphones, big old ones that go on the side of your ears, and I listen to it that way. And so I do think I got a pretty good experience with that. And then after the first listen, I would just put in my regular earbuds, and whenever I'm on my way to work or if I'm walking around or something like that, that's when I listen to it.
Gotcha. I was just wondering if you did what I did and put it in your car, blasted it while driving around in neighborhoods.
Neighborhoods?
In the hard streets of Springfield, Missouri, yes.
Everybody's on their couch like, is that me against the world?
It's me against the world, and it sounds like it's coming from that Jimmy John's parking lot.
I'm trying to watch The Simpsons.
Yeah.
And you're blaring me against the world. Just my final thoughts are, like I said, it's a good album. If people should try it. They should try it. I know that some people might take a lot of issue with the lyrics, but again, that's one of those things where that was part of the time. That was part of the culture. That's how they communicated their thoughts and feelings, and those are the words that they described. And I'm not going to fault them for that. It is what it is.
Yeah. Yeah, I concur. So I think we're good. We've been here for a while, so
we love it. Everybody loves it.
Yes. So this has been the Vinyl Vault. Even though again we're not talking about a vinyl, we should maybe change the name. It could be called the CD Center. I don't know.
2 ding dongs and a record player. I don't know.
Yeah, something like that. So anyway, it's that was Tupac. Me Against the World. This is the Vinyl Vault for Parker Padgett. I'm Tony Nguyen. We'll see you next week.